para nosotros es un placer tener a Stephen aquí, a Inure y a Mona, que vienen de sitios tan diversos y tan lejanos, ¿no? como Bélgica, como Flandes, como Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina o Irán. Y paso a presentaros a Stephen. Stephen Lodewyck es el director del Museo in Flanders Fields de Ypres, el único museo de renombre nacional dedicado a la historia y el patrimonio de la Primera Guerra Mundial en Bélgica. Como director es responsable de la organización interna de las actividades científicas, públicas y educativas del museo, mantiene y refuerza el papel social del museo como un actor principal en el ámbito cultural y social más amplio, supervisa la calidad y la dirección estratégica del museo y lo representa de cara al exterior. Stephen es director del Museo in Flanders Fields desde agosto del 2021. Anteriormente trabajó durante 12 años en Westover, la organización responsable de la preparación y aplicación de la política turística en la provincia de Flandes Occidental. Y dentro de Westover fue responsable de la preparación y ejecución de la conmemoración del centenario de la Primera Guerra Mundial, 2014-2018.
Buenos días. I will talk in English because I can't speak Spanish, but we have a lot what I am going to say now will be is translated on the papers that you have. So first of all, I want to thank Irachi and all of you to have invited us from the Flanders Fields Museum here for this very interesting seminar. And just proposing myself, I'm in fact director of the Flanders Fields Museum in the province of West Flanders in Belgica, and the Flanders Fields Museum is concerned about the theme of the First World War. I used to be involved in the whole preparation of the centenary period, 2014-2018 was a very important period for us because there was a lot of dynamic, a lot of attention about the First World War and the heritage of the First World War. So this presentation I bring you as director of the museum, but also with that in mind that I worked 10 years before on this centennial period. So after me, or behind me, you can see the cloth hall. It's a very iconic building in Ypres, not far from the coast of Belgium, in the province of West Flanders. We call it the Flanders Fields region. Today, Ypres is a very quiet, peaceful city of only 35,000 inhabitants, but we welcome a lot of visitors and tourists. Ypres has a very important and also staggering past, in which much history has been written, as people from all over the world came to Ypres and the surrounding region at one time or another in history under different circumstances. And perhaps the most important witness to this past is the cloth hall. Like you see, it's built in the 13th century, and at the time it was the largest Gothic building in the world, which was not a church or cathedral, so which had no religious function. The cloth hall itself is testifies to the heyday of Ypres as a very wealthy textile producing town in the Middle Ages. The building combined covered markets, so the cloth halls, in fact there are several halls, and the belfry tower and the storage spaces with the function of a town hall. Okay. But it was ravaged by fire in the early months of the war, of the First World War, and it would be completely destroyed during the course of the war. The piece of Belfry Tower that was still standing straight has become iconic through the many photographs and painting in which it figured. I can show you in my presentation. This was still standing straight after the war. So, and this has been becoming a very iconic picture. Okay. So, just some history about the First World War and the region where where the museum is at. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Belgium, our country, remained neutral. But on the 4th of August 1914, 3 German armies invaded the country. Even with the help of the French and the British in the first month, the German advance could not be stopped. As it raged through the country, the war left a trail of destruction in its wake, as you can see here. After 3 months of fierce battle, the area around Ypres was the very last gap in the front line. On the slide you can see almost in the middle is the marketplace where used to be the cloth hall and the cathedral. So as you can see, everything was destroyed. So with the first Battle of Ypres, the stalemate on the western front was complete. From the Belgian coast to the Swiss border, over 800 kilometers, both camps began to dig in. And so a spade becoming as precious as a rifle. In this war, industrial warfare, so trenches, artillery, barbed wire, proved to be all-consuming. The enormously powerful artillery fire claimed masses of lives. In Belgium alone, in the First World War, 600,000 people died, lost their lives. Not casualties, but deadly victims. But still, the stalemate of the trench warfare was not broken, and so it led to a massive destruction because you had 4 years of trench warfare. The military would spend the whole war seeking new weapons and tactics with which to achieve a breakthrough. So, although Ypres is a small city and this region was only a small part of the western front of the 800 kilometers, it became a very important and a very symbolic place. After the war, the city and the cloth hall were rebuilt, and itself it's a strong symbol of resurrection and of the power of local people coming back to their city and wanted to build it again. Since 1998, the In Flanders Fields Museum is established in the Cloth Hall, in this lieu de mémoire. So there was the museum itself is on the first floor, as you can see here on the first floor, and runs through here. So the southern wing and the western wing. So when war was over in 1918, the region where it raged has to try and give it a place in societal life restarted. The reconstruction of the Westhoek, so the region, the Flanders Fields region, thus had to embed military cemeteries, national monuments, or to establish new ones, whereas various communities wanted war monuments built. Pilgrims too, and visitors. Oh.
No, it comes.
Ah, okay. Oh, sorry. Pilgrims too, and visitors in search of the past determined the revival, and rituals such as the Last Post and the Easter pilgrimage became daily or annually repeated events. In the slide you can see here, yeah, but it's not visible from behind, from the back. But here you have one of the buses that brings tourists to, then they were called pilgrims, bring over to Ypres to see the ruins. And a lot of these pilgrims were visiting graves and cemeteries where their loved ones has died and are buried. So this unique interwovenness with the past is part of the present identity of the Westhoek. We always say the identity of the Westhoek and the inhabitants of the Westhoek are determined, their DNA is marked with what has happened there. In these former fields of battle, the war, we say, never goes by. Okay, maybe I just return this to this one. So travel to the front began at the end of the First World War. The collection of the In Flanders Fields Museum contains many original photographs, souvenirs, travel brochures, posters and self-documentation that bear witness to more than a century of this commemorative tourism. The museum itself also plays an important role in this commemorative tourism. I will try to illustrate where the museum touches this remembrance tourism and the remembrance tourists. I will focus on the In Flanders Fields Museum from its start in 1998, not before that period, because notwithstanding there were predecessors of the museum. Okay. The mission of our museum clearly states, and I highlight it here, is that the In Flanders Fields Museum gives meaning to the war heritage in all its manifestations, inside and outside its walls. It's only one sentence, but it's very important for us, because if we're talking about war heritage in all its manifestations, it's not only objects, but it is also intangible heritage, stories that came to us from the veterans and people that have lived through the war. Of course, now all the veterans have died, but we have stories from the past. And we believe that we are a museum in the Cloth Hall is important. So the Cloth Hall itself is maybe the most important piece of collection from our museum, but also the landscape out of the museum with all these military cemeteries, monuments, but also natural relics are, in fact, sometimes we call it the real museum. So if you want to have an impression on what happened there 100 years ago, you should go to, thank you, to the museum, but also to the surrounding landscape. Important to know is that the In Flanders Fields Museum does not tell the whole story of the First World War in Belgium, but presents the war as it can be evoked through the museum's collection. Objects, images, people and stories, always in relation to the place where the museum is located, the Cloth Hall, the city of Ypres and the Flanders Fields region. This has always been very important for the museum and acknowledged by many visitors. The eyewitnesses of the war are our guides, taking us beyond the images, beyond the objects and texts, and thus bringing the public into close contact with the nature of war. The personal stories trail starts at the very beginning of the exhibition. Every visitor receives a poppy bracelet, like you see on the slide. The visitor is then identified as a visitor because the bracelet opens also the gates, but it also connects visitors to the identification tags or dog tags that soldiers wore in the war. With this bracelet you can decide which war witness you want to encounter 4 times during the exhibition, the permanent exhibition, selected on a world map at the first kiosk. So if the visit of the museum is over, visitors are welcome in the research center. Its own historical research there is combined with family stories of the visitors by the sharing of personal stories, donations of letters, diaries and so on, but also objects found in the ruins of Ypres as souvenirs at the time, but returned by the family to us, to Ypres, many decades later. Some of these objects and stories then are uploaded again in the museum, where you can select it with your copy bracelet. In this way, the museum and research center connects with the remembrance tourist of today and his or her family history. Millions of people came here from so many different countries to take part in huge and often hopeless battles. We now know that people from at least 116 present-day countries and regions died in Belgium during World War I. 116. We used to think it's about 50 contemporary states. No, it's about from 116 16 present-day countries. Many were killed in action and were buried here and still commemorated today. In that death and commemoration, the city of Ypres and the whole area of the front are still profoundly connected to each of the countries from which those people came. So we share a common history. That's why we have visitors coming over from 76 present-day countries, all sharing a connection with this former battlefield. And so regarding our collection, our visitors, I can share some numbers with you. We had an average between 1998 to 2023 of 210,000 visitors. And maybe because I have not so much time left, I just take the important ones. 38% of the visitors come from Belgium. Oh, sorry. And 62% of the visitors come from abroad. That's remarkable because we are in fact a very international museum. And since the beginning of the museum, more than 2 million children or youngsters have visited the museum, so under the age of 18. Okay. A third of our visitors are in fact school groups. Together with an enthusiastic group of educational volunteers, 3 professionals make up the educational learning team at the In Flanders Fields Museum. Their job is to make the complex history of the First World War accessible to teachers and their students. From workshops to day trips, they developed a wide range of educational programs for different age groups, both inside and outside the museum. And about this surrounding area, last year 139 World War I cemeteries and memorial sites in Belgium and France were inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. We are proud to say that the In Flanders Fields Museum was closely involved in preparing this redrafted application. 27 of these cemeteries and monuments and memorial sites can be found in the region, the Flanders Fields region. And what is important is that UNESCO recognizes that these places bear, and I quote, witness to a new typology of decorative, architectural and landscape elements of exceptional quality and to a new tradition of commemorating war victims, individually and equally. More important, cemeteries and missing memorials are considered by UNESCO as places that invite people to reflect on war and peace-seeking reconciliation. In an exhibition we organized last year, we quoted King George V, who stated already back in 1922, and I quote, "Are there any more powerful advocates of peace than this massive crowd of silent witnesses to the devastation of war, unquote. So I go to the end of my presentation. I have skipped some things, but I'll say the most important thing, this educational team of the Flanders Fields Museum works closely together with the peace service of the city of Ypres. The links with the end of the exhibition where it's explained that since 1985 the city of Ypres explicitly engages with the war legacy by calling itself City of Peace. And in conclusion,
afterwards they have lunch in the museum cafe, and then we gather at the main gate. So we get on the bus and drive through the historical landscapes or the region around Ypres. Today we have the day trip Salients Illustrated, and we'll discover the Yorkshire Trench and dugout with an application. The students can go around on the spot and discover what's happened over there.
I think using a cartoon style is something that will be novel, and I think it will capture people's attention, we hope, and it will broaden the appeal of the subject, and it will help people to learn. It will be a learning experience, and also we very much hope that it will make people understand what happened here.
We use the app and the drawing to explain to the students what was over there back then. With a few instructions they can really understand what the situation was. We also love to read the letters, the testimonies we have of former soldiers outlined in the landscape, and then later on we do a workshop in Klein Zwaanhof and visit the cemeteries, Scone Valley Cemetery and Welsh Cemetery.
We think it's really important for them to see the places where history took place in the 20th century. You can learn about the Great War on TV programs, on YouTube, read it about in books, but I think coming to the places where these terrible battles happened and seeing firsthand the cemeteries, visiting the museums, the sites, places like the Yorkshire Trench, I think it's invaluable for the students. It gives them an experience that they wouldn't get otherwise.
I think the experience was pretty cool because you got to see in the soldiers' eyes. It's like sort of like what they would imagine, what they would be doing down there and stuff like that. And I feel like it made you think.
The Yorkshire trenches were really awesome to see, as you could see all of the tunnels that had been rebuilt, and also the flooded things, so it was been horrendous to imagine all of the conditions that they were living in day to day.
So, I will conclude. The museum touches on commemorative tourism and visitors in different places and at different times. Firstly, in the museum, of course, itself, where the emphasis is on following original witnesses rather than a sequence of military facts. The last section deals with remembrance since the war and juxtaposes the different forms of remembrance, both material and immaterial. In the research center, visitors can share stories and donate objects from their relatives who lived through the war. Some of these stories and objects find their way back to the museum in a curated form, where they are in turn shared with all our visitors. So we call it sharing history. I thank you.